High in the forgotten reaches of the Blue Ridge Mountains, a boy of 11 stands beside a weathered cabin door, his German shepherd pressed against his leg with unusual intensity. Jacob watches the sun sink behind distant peaks, the afternoon light fading to dusky purple as the wind whispers through the ancient pines surrounding his mother's childhood home. 3 weeks have passed since the funeral, since the social worker explained he would need to stay with his uncle in the city unless another arrangement could be made. Now, as darkness falls on his first night in his inherited cabin, his faithful dog Max whines and scratches frantically at a specific spot near the stone fireplace. The boy notices a thin, almost imperceptible seam in the floorboards, unlike any other in the cabin. What secret has his mother kept hidden all these years? What lies beneath these ancient floors? And why does his dog seem to know exactly where to find it? Morning light streams through dusty windows as Jacob kneels beside the fireplace, his fingers trembling slightly as they trace the nearly invisible seam in the floorboards that Max discovered the night before. The German shepherd sits attentively nearby, his intelligent eyes fixed on Jacob's movements, tail sweeping the floor in rhythmic anticipation, while Uncle Robert's snores rumble from the small bedroom down the hall, the man having claimed the only proper bed after arriving late last night with supplies from town, grumbling about the lack of proper cell service and the cabin's outdated amenities. Jacob presses his fingertips into the small indentation he found, drawing a deep breath before pulling upward with all his strength, the wood resisting at first before yielding with a sound like a sigh, revealing a square opening approximately 3 feet across and the top of a narrow wooden staircase descending into darkness below. Cool air rises from the hidden space, carrying with it the scent of old paper and something else, a mineral tang that reminds Jacob of the caves his mother once showed him during a summer hike years ago. Max whines softly, edging closer to the opening, his nose working frantically to catalog the unfamiliar scents, while Jacob retrieves his flashlight from his backpack, the beam cutting through the subterranean shadows to reveal rough-hewn steps leading down into what appears to be a room carved directly from the mountain's bedrock. "Stay close, boy," Jacob whispers, his heart hammering against his ribs as he lowers himself through the opening, placing cautious feet on the first wooden step, which creaks but holds firm beneath his weight. Max following so closely behind that the boy can feel warm breath against his ankle with each careful descent into the unknown. The staircase ends in a small chamber approximately 10 feet square, its walls lined with crude shelves holding dozens of notebooks, maps rolled into tight cylinders secured with faded ribbon, and cardboard boxes labeled in his mother's familiar handwriting, newspaper archives, local accounts, historical society documents, and most intriguing of all, one simply marked "Evidence" in bold red letters that seemed to pulse in the flashlight's beam. A metal desk dominates the center of the room, its surface covered with open journals filled with his mother's distinctive script, pages marked with colorful tabs and sticky notes, creating a rainbow of research breadcrumbs, while thumbtacks secure a large topographical map to the wall above, red circles marking specific locations throughout the mountain range, connected by lines of different colors as though tracing paths between points of significance. Jacob's hands shake as he lifts one of the journals, recognizing his mother's handwriting filling page after page with observations, theories, and references to historical events he's never heard of. The most recent entry dated just 3 days before her fatal car accident. "Getting close now. Found the third marker exactly where the old stories said it would be. If the pattern holds, the source should be accessible through the northern cave system, though I'll need more time to confirm the exact location before documenting it properly. So many watching now. Must be careful." Photographs spill from between journal pages, black and white images of stone carvings that appear incredibly ancient, shots of his mother standing beside local landmarks Jacob recognizes from their summer visits, and most surprisingly, several showing Max as a puppy being held by an elderly Native American man whose stern expression contrasts sharply with the gentle way he cradles the young dog in gnarled hands. "What were you doing, Mom?" Jacob whispers, fingers tracing the last entry in her journal, the words seeming to vibrate with urgency and an undercurrent of fear that makes his stomach tighten with apprehension. Max nudges his hand with a cold nose before moving to the far corner of the room where a small wooden chest sits partially hidden behind stacked boxes, the dog pawing gently at its carved lid as though indicating another discovery waiting to be made. Jacob moves to join him, kneeling beside the chest to examine the intricate patterns etched into its surface, geometric shapes interwoven with stylized animals and what appears to be a map of stars. His mother's research suddenly feeling less like academic curiosity and more like something vital, something dangerous enough to hide beneath the floor of a remote mountain cabin. "Whatever you were looking for, Mom," Jacob promises softly, placing his hand on Max's head for reassurance as much as comfort. "We're going to find it and finish what you started." Morning light filters through the cabin windows as Jacob sits cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by his mother's journals arranged in chronological order, their worn covers bearing dates stretching back 5 years, while Max keeps vigilant watch by the door, ears perking at every forest sound drifting through the partially open window. Uncle Robert had left at dawn for a meeting with a real estate appraiser in town, his parting words a stern warning for Jacob to stay put and don't wander off, unwittingly giving the boy perfect freedom to explore the secret room's contents without interruption or explanation. The earliest journal begins innocently enough, documenting his mother's interest in local folklore about healing waters, hidden somewhere in these mountains, her academic curiosity evident in carefully cited references to historical accounts, interviews with elderly residents, and passages copied from rare books found in university archives. "The consistency of the oral histories suggests more than mere legend," she wrote in an entry from 4 years ago. "Multiple unrelated sources describe a spring with extraordinary properties, known to indigenous peoples for centuries before European settlement, its location protected as sacred knowledge passed down through specific bloodlines." Jacob's finger traces her elegant handwriting as the entries progress, watching her methodical research transform from scholarly interest to personal mission, the tone shifting dramatically following an entry describing her meeting with a tribal elder named Raymond Two Hawks, who apparently recognized something in her that prompted him to share information withheld from previous researchers. He says, "Our family has a connection to this place that predates our awareness of it, that my grandmother's grandmother was entrusted with guardian knowledge when she married into the settler community, creating a bloodline bridge between worlds." It sounds mystical, but the historical details he provided about my ancestors cannot be dismissed or explained by coincidence. The journals from the past 2 years reveal his mother's deepening involvement with what she calls the Council of Seven, a small group including herself, Raymond Two Hawks, and 5 others committed to protecting what they refer to only as the source from commercial exploitation. Her words growing increasingly cautious as she documents evidence of mineral exploration companies showing unusual interest in the region, sending surveyors to areas without known commercial resources. Russell believes someone within the council has been compromised. Reads an entry from 8 months ago. "Too many coincidences lately. Equipment disturbed. The break-in at my office. The men asking questions in town about my research specifically. Most disturbing are the final months of entries, where his mother's elegant handwriting occasionally gives way to hurried scrolls, paranoia seeping through her typically logical observations. Being followed again today. Same black SUV, tinted windows, keeping exactly 3 car lengths back. Amateur technique, but concerning nonetheless." And later, moving the most critical documentation to the cabin's secure room. "If anything happens to me, Jacob must be brought here. The dog will help him. Raymond has seen to that. Blood calls to blood, knowledge to knowledge." The very last entry, dated 3 days before her fatal accident on a mountain road, sends ice through Jacob's veins. "Brake line on the car appeared damaged this morning. Had it repaired immediately. Someone is getting desperate or careless, perhaps both. The final marker is confirmed. Once documented, I'll entrust everything to Raymond for safekeeping. Too dangerous to keep here now, with the watchers so close." Jacob's hands tremble as he closes the final journal, the truth crystallizing with terrible clarity. His mother hadn't lost control on a rainy mountain road as the police report suggested. Someone had ensured she never made it down the mountain that day. Someone who wanted whatever secret she had discovered about this place. Someone who might not know about this hidden room, but certainly knew about her research. His eyes meet Max's steady gaze, the German Shepherd's unusual intelligence suddenly taking on new significance with the discovery of the photograph showing him as a puppy in Raymond Two Hawk's hands. "They killed her, didn't they, boy?" Jacob whispers, his voice breaking as Max crosses the room to press against him, offering warm comfort against the cold reality of what the journals reveal. "And they might come looking for what she found, for what she knew," he continues, gathering the most recent journals to his chest, a new determination forming beneath his grief as he realizes that understanding his mother's research isn't just about solving a mystery. It's about protecting what she died to keep secret, and possibly about keeping himself and Max safe from whoever had ensured her silence. The crunch of tires on gravel sends Jacob scrambling to close the trapdoor, sliding the antique rug back into place just as Uncle Robert's voice booms through the cabin, accompanied by unfamiliar footsteps and the sound of another man's laughter. Max stands rigid beside Jacob, hackles raised, a low growl building in his throat, as the boy quickly shoves his mother's most recent journal under a couch cushion, before the living room door swings open to reveal his uncle ushering in a tall, lean stranger with salt and pepper hair and an expensive-looking jacket, too formal for the mountain setting. "Jacob, this is Dr. Lawrence Merrick from the university," Uncle Robert announces, his tone unnaturally cheerful, clearly impressed by the visitor's credentials. "He worked with your mother on her research and just heard about her passing." The stranger steps forward with an outstretched hand and practiced smile that doesn't quite reach his pale blue eyes, which scan the room with clinical precision before settling on Jacob. "I'm so sorry about Elena," Dr. Merrick says, his voice smooth as creek stones. "Your mother was a brilliant colleague and a dear friend. We collaborated on several projects regarding local folklore and archaeological anomalies in these mountains." Max's growl grows louder as the man approaches, causing Uncle Robert to frown and grab for the dog's collar, but Jacob moves subtly, positioning himself between his dog and the visitor, while forcing a polite nod. "Mom never mentioned you," he says simply, noting how the man's smile tightens almost imperceptibly at his words. "Well, Elena was always private about her work, Doctor." Merrick responds with a dismissive wave, especially these last few months when she was on to something quite significant, though she wouldn't share the details even with me. The man moves casually around the living room, eyes lingering on bookshelves in the fireplace area, one polished shoe coming to rest on the corner of the rug covering the trapdoor. "I was hoping she might have left some of her research materials here. Notes, photographs, perhaps maps. The university would greatly value adding them to her academic legacy." Uncle Robert nods enthusiastically. "We haven't sorted through her things yet, but you're welcome to look around. Isn't that right, Jacob?" The boy feels Max trembling with tension beside him, the dog's eyes never leaving the visitor, and something in that unnatural vigilance confirms the instinctive distrust blooming in Jacob's chest. "Mom kept most of her work at her office," he lies smoothly, remembering the journal entries about betrayal and watchers. "She didn't bring work to the cabin. It was her escape place." "Doctor." Merrick's eyes narrow briefly before his practiced smile returns. "Perhaps you're right, but I'd still like to look around if you don't mind. Elena sometimes worked without realizing it, notes scribbled on envelopes, books with important marginalia. Academic minds, you know how they are." Throughout dinner, the man asks questions disguised as reminiscences, probing for information about specific locations on the mountain. Whether his mother had mentioned caves or unusual rock formations, if she'd spent time with any local tribal members. Jacob answers carefully, watching how Max refuses to relax despite Uncle Robert's scolding, how the dog positions himself between Jacob and the visitor at every opportunity, baring teeth when Dr. Merrick attempts to pat his head. When the stranger finally leaves with promises to return tomorrow, Jacob locks the door behind him, then kneels beside Max, whispering into his fur, "You know something about him, don't you, boy? He's one of the watchers Mom wrote about." In the growing darkness, Jacob makes a silent vow to protect his mother's secrets, understanding now that the danger she feared might be closer than he ever imagined. Dawn breaks over the mountains as Jacob slips silently from his sleeping bag, careful not to wake his uncle who returned late from the local bar, whiskey on his breath and frustration in his heavy footsteps. With Max following close behind, Jacob slides back the rug and opens the trapdoor, both of them descending into the secret room illuminated only by his flashlight beam cutting through the underground darkness. "We don't have much time," Jacob whispers to Max. "That man will be back today." The large topographical map pinned to the wall draws his attention now, its surface covered with his mother's notations, colored pins, and intricate lines connecting what appear to be significant locations throughout the mountain range. Jacob studies it carefully, recognizing familiar landmarks: the fire tower on Raven's Peak, the old logging road, the abandoned mine shaft that local kids dare each other to approach but never enter. Max whines softly, rising on his hind legs to place his front paws against the wall, a nose pressing against a specific location marked with a blue pin, and the notation, "third marker divided by confluence," in his mother's handwriting. Jacob's breath catches as he recognizes the spot, Crystal Falls, where his mother had taken him during their last summer visit, insisting on hiking there despite the difficult terrain, spending hours photographing unusual rock formations while Jacob played in the shallow pools beneath the cascading water. "You're right, boy," Jacob murmurs, gently stroking Max's fur. "That's somewhere we can actually go." The dog drops back to all fours, circling excitedly before moving to another section of the map, pawing at an area marked with a red pin labeled Source, surrounded by question marks and connected to other points by dotted lines rather than solid ones, suggesting theoretical connections rather than confirmed paths. Jacob takes dozens of photos of the map with his phone, carefully documenting each section before turning his attention to a leather-bound portfolio hidden beneath the metal desk, its covers secured with an intricate knot rather than a lock or clasp. Inside, he finds detailed hand-drawn maps of specific areas, each rendered with remarkable precision and artistic skill, focusing on smaller regions of the larger mountain range, with notes about seasonal water levels, cave access points, and lunar phase observations. One drawing in particular shows Crystal Falls from an unusual angle, revealing a narrow passage behind the water curtain that Jacob had never noticed during their visit, with notes indicating solstice alignment and entrance only visible at midsummer noon. His mother's meticulous documentation suddenly feels like breadcrumbs intentionally left for someone to follow, perhaps even for him specifically. Max returns to his side, nosing at a small leather pouch that had fallen from between the maps, its drawstring loosened by the dog's curious investigation. Inside, Jacob finds a smooth river stone carved with unfamiliar symbols and a braided cord of red, black, and white threads, along with a folded note in his mother's handwriting. "Protection for the journey. Raymond says the seeker must carry these when approaching the sacred places." The sound of a car engine in the distance sends Jacob scrambling to return everything to its place, securing the portfolio beneath the desk and pocketing only the stone and cord before hurrying up the stairs with Max. As they emerge from the hidden room and carefully replace the trapdoor and rug, Jacob makes a quick decision, whispering to Max, "We're going to Crystal Falls today, before Dr. Merrick comes back." The German shepherd's tail wags with what seems like understanding as Jacob hastily packs his backpack with water bottles, granola bars, and his mother's compass, determination replacing fear as he prepares to follow the first concrete lead in the mystery that claimed his mother's life. Jacob's heart pounds as he scribbles a hasty note for his uncle, taking Max for a hike back by dinner, leaving it prominently on the kitchen table before slipping out the back door, just as the sound of Dr. Merrick's expensive car reaches the front of the cabin. The forest embraces them immediately, ancient trees providing cover as they move swiftly along barely visible trails, Jacob following his mother's detailed map, while Max trots ahead with surprising confidence, occasionally pausing to ensure his young master keeps pace. The journey to Crystal Falls takes nearly 2 hours, their path growing steeper and more challenging as they near the landmark, the roar of cascading water reaching them long before the waterfall comes into view. "We made it, boy," Jacob whispers as they emerge from dense forest into the clearing where Crystal Falls thunders down a 50-foot rock face, sunlight creating ephemeral rainbows in the mist. Max wastes no time, darting toward the base of the falls with purpose rather than the playful energy most dogs would display near water. Jacob follows, consulting his phone's photos of his mother's maps and notes as they approach the curtain of water, the specific angle from her drawings suddenly making perfect sense as he notices how the afternoon sun illuminates a narrow gap behind the cascading water that would be invisible from most viewing positions. The German shepherd whines impatiently, already moving toward this hidden passage, fur darkening as water spray dampens his coat. "I'm coming," Jacob calls, securing his phone in a waterproof pocket before following Max through the narrow gap, the temperature dropping noticeably as they slip behind the thundering curtain of water into a shallow cave, illuminated by diffused light filtering through the liquid barrier. The walls glisten with moisture, but what captures Jacob's attention are the symbols carved into the stone, spiraling patterns, animal figures, and geometric shapes that match exactly the drawings in his mother's journals. "She was here," he whispers, running his fingers over the ancient carvings, feeling the connection to his mother in this hidden place she had documented so carefully. Max circles the cave restlessly before stopping at a specific spot, pawing insistently at what appears to be ordinary dirt and pebbles on the cave floor. Jacob kneels beside his dog, remembering his mother's notes about the solstice alignment, glancing up to notice how a particular beam of light penetrates the water curtain to illuminate precisely where Max is digging. Joining the effort with his hands, Jacob scrapes away earth and stone until his fingers strike something solid, a small metal box approximately 6 inches square, its surface etched with symbols matching those on the cave walls. The box is surprisingly heavy for its size, sealed without visible hinges or lock, its seams nearly imperceptible in the dim cave light. Jacob traces the patterns with trembling fingers, remembering his mother doing the same with the unusual rock formations during their last visit, her actions now revealed as deliberate investigation rather than casual observation. He slips the box into his backpack just as a shadow momentarily darkens the cave entrance, causing Max to growl low in his throat, hackles rising as he positions himself protectively before Jacob. "Someone followed us," the boy whispers, heart racing as he peers cautiously toward the water curtain, glimpsing movement on the opposite bank, a tall figure scanning the area with methodical precision. Jacob recognizes the expensive jacket even at this distance. Somehow Dr. Merrick had tracked them to the falls, confirming his worst suspicions about the man's true interest in his mother's research. "We need to find another way out," Jacob murmurs to Max, moving deeper into the cave where the darkness swallows them, using his phone's flashlight to reveal a narrow tunnel leading away from the waterfall entrance, footprints in the damp earth, suggesting his mother had explored this passage before them. With one last glance toward the water curtain, where Dr. Merrick's silhouette now approaches, Jacob makes his decision, whispering to Max, "Lead the way, boy." As they disappear into the mountain's depths, the metal box heavy against his back, carrying secrets his mother had died to protect. Twilight bathes the cabin in purple shadows as Jacob sits cross-legged on his sleeping bag, the mysterious metal box from the cave placed carefully before him, while Max stands guard by the window, his attention focused on the graveled driveway where Uncle Robert's truck should appear any moment. They had managed to evade Dr. Merrick by taking a circuitous route home through dense forest, arriving mud-splattered and exhausted but triumphant with their discovery safely hidden in Jacob's backpack. Now, with trembling fingers, Jacob examines the box more closely, noticing how certain symbols along its edges align when turned in a specific sequence, the realization dawning that it's not just sealed but deliberately locked by an ancient mechanism. "Mom figured this out," he whispers to Max, remembering how his mother would create elaborate puzzle boxes for his birthdays, always saying, "The best treasures require patience and clever thinking, Jacob." Following intuition, he rotates the box sides in a pattern matching the spiral carvings from the cave wall, holding his breath as a nearly inaudible click rewards his effort, the top panel sliding open to reveal its contents nestled in faded velvet. Inside lies an unusual key, unlike any Jacob has seen before, crafted from what appears to be copper and silver twisted together into an intricate design. its teeth forming a pattern rather than a straight line, alongside a small leather-bound notebook with his name written on the cover in his mother's handwriting. "She meant for me to find this," Jacob murmurs, carefully lifting the notebook and opening it to reveal pages of text written in the special code they had invented together during long summer evenings at the cabin, a simple substitution cipher no one else would recognize. The first page begins, "My dearest Jacob, if you're reading this, I've failed to complete what I started, and the responsibility has passed to you. I'm sorry for this burden, but there was no one else I could trust with such knowledge." His throat tightens as he decodes his mother's final message, learning how she had discovered that the local legends about healing waters were based on truth, a natural spring with unusual mineral properties hidden deep within the mountain, protected for centuries by an alliance between indigenous guardians and select trusted outsiders. The key opens a lock at what she calls the final gateway, its location marked on a map tucked into the notebook's back cover, with instructions to seek Raymond Two Hawks for guidance when ready to proceed. The sound of tires on gravel interrupts his reading as Uncle Robert's truck pulls up outside, followed by the slam of a car door that signals they have company. Through the window, Jacob sees Dr. Merrick emerging from his vehicle behind his uncle, their animated conversation suggesting the man has concocted some explanation for tracking Jacob to the waterfall earlier. Hastily, Jacob returns the key and coded notebook to the box, sliding it under his sleeping bag just as heavy footsteps climb the porch steps. "We're leaving in 2 weeks," Uncle Robert announces the moment he enters, not bothering with a greeting or questions about Jacob's day-long absence. "Dr. Merrick has connected me with a realtor who specializes in vacation properties. Says we can get top dollar if we list before fall." The man himself stands in the doorway, his practiced smile doing nothing to mask the calculating assessment in his eyes as they sweep across the room, lingering momentarily on Jacob's mud-stained clothes and shoes. "Quite an adventure today, young man?" he inquires with false casualness. "The mountains can be dangerous for solitary explorers." The implied threat hangs in the air between them as Max moves to stand beside Jacob, a low growl rumbling in his chest. The urgency of his situation crystallizes in Jacob's mind. 2 weeks to solve his mother's mystery, find the spring, and somehow protect it from the man who likely orchestrated her death, all while keeping his actions hidden from an uncle eager to wash his hands of both nephew and mountain legacy. The hidden room beneath the cabin floor has become Jacob's sanctuary in the 3 days since finding the key, each night spent poring over his mother's research while Uncle Robert sleeps, unaware of his nephew's midnight investigations. Tonight, Jacob sits cross-legged on the earthen floor, surrounded by stacks of notebooks and folders pulled from a dusty box labeled Family Archives, which had been tucked into the farthest corner under the metal desk. Max lies beside him, chin resting on paws, watching with alert eyes as Jacob carefully sifts through brittle newspaper clippings and faded documents chronicling his family's long history in these mountains. A yellowed envelope slides from between 2 folders, spilling several photographs onto the floor, one in particular catching Jacob's eye, a faded color image from perhaps 20 years earlier showing a group of 7 people standing proudly before what appears to be a mine entrance partially obscured by forest growth. Jacob's breath catches as he recognizes his mother, much younger but with the same determined eyes. Standing beside an elderly man he identifies as his grandfather from the few photos he has seen of the man who died before Jacob was born. 5 others complete the group, 2 women and 3 men of various ages, their diverse appearances suggesting different backgrounds and ethnicities, but united by the solemn expressions they wear for this clearly significant moment. Turning the photograph over, Jacob finds neat handwriting he doesn't recognize. The Council of 7, Guardians of the Source, Summer Solstice Induction, 2003. His hands tremble slightly as he studies the faces more carefully. Sudden recognition hitting like a physical blow. Standing at the far edge of the group, the younger with darker hair but unmistakable, is Dr. Lawrence Merrick, his arm draped casually over the shoulder of a Native American man who must be Raymond Two Hawks, based on the journal descriptions. He was one of them, Jacob whispers to Max, the revelation casting Dr. Merrick's recent interest in a sinister new light. Mom wrote that someone in the council betrayed them. It must have been him. The German shepherd growls softly as if confirming Jacob's suspicion, pressing his warm body closer as the boy continues examining the remaining photographs, finding several showing the same group at different locations throughout the mountains, often gathered around unusual rock formations or cave entrances, always with the same solemn purpose evident in their expressions. In one particularly striking image, his mother and grandfather stand in a shallow stream bed, holding what appears to be the same metal box Jacob recovered from behind the waterfall, their faces illuminated with discovery and reverence. A creak from above freezes Jacob mid-motion, footsteps crossing the cabin floor directly over the hidden room, too light to be Uncle Robert's heavy tread. Max is immediately alert, ears forward, a warning rumble building in his chest as Jacob hastily gathers the photographs and extinguishes his flashlight, plunging them into complete darkness as the footsteps pause directly above the trapdoor. Long seconds pass in tense silence, Jacob hardly daring to breathe while straining to hear any further movement, a relief washing through him only when the footsteps finally continue toward the kitchen before the cabin's back door opens and closes quietly. Someone was searching the cabin. Jacob whispers to Max once he's certain the intruder has gone. We need to find Raymond, 2 Hawks, before it's too late. Carefully tucking the photographs into his pocket, Jacob makes a silent promise to visit town tomorrow, determined to locate the one person who might provide answers about the Council of Seven, the mysterious source, and most importantly, why his mother's former colleague now seems desperate to obtain research she died protecting. Morning sunlight filters through pine branches as Jacob stands at the cabin window, a bowl of cereal forgotten in his hands while his eyes scan the tree line where something, or someone, had moved just moments before. A shadow too deliberate to be wildlife, too cautious to be a casual hiker. Max paces restlessly beside him, hackles slightly raised, his usual calm demeanor replaced by vigilant tension that only confirms Jacob's suspicion that they're being watched. Uncle Robert had left at dawn for another meeting with the realtor, and his increasing absence, a mixed blessing that provides Jacob freedom to explore his mother's research, but leaves him vulnerable in the increasingly threatening atmosphere surrounding the remote cabin. Setting aside his breakfast, Jacob retrieves his binoculars from his backpack and focuses on the spot where he'd noticed movement, scanning methodically until he catches a glimpse of dark fabric against green foliage. Someone crouching behind a fallen log approximately 50 yards from the cabin, partially concealed but maintaining clear sightlines to both doors. "See him, boy," Jacob whispers to Max, whose low growl provides answer enough as the German shepherd moves to stand protectively close, eyes fixed in the same direction with unnerving precision. Throughout the day, Jacob pretends normalcy while maintaining awareness of their observer, occasionally catching glimpses of movement as the watcher changes positions, but never fully abandons his surveillance. As twilight descends on the mountain, Uncle Robert returns with pizza and preoccupied silence, brushing aside Jacob's carefully casual mention of seeing someone in the woods with dismissive words about hikers wandering off trail and nothing to worry about in these parts. Night falls like a velvet curtain over the cabin, moonlight casting silver patterns through windows as Jacob lies awake in his sleeping bag. Max, an unusually tense presence beside him while Uncle Robert's snores rumble from the bedroom. The scratching comes just past midnight, faint but unmistakable against the back door, followed by the subtle sound of metal on metal that raises the hair on Jacob's neck. Someone attempting to pick the lock. Max reacts instantly, a deep warning bark erupting from his chest as he bounds toward the sound, triggering a crash as the intruder apparently stumbles backward off the porch. Uncle Robert emerges from the bedroom, sleep-confused and irritated, dismissing the disturbance as probably just raccoons, despite Jacob's insistence that someone had tried entering the cabin. "You've got an overactive imagination, kid," his uncle mutters, returning to bed with a warning not to wake me again unless the place is actually on fire. Sleep eludes Jacob for the remainder of the night, his body tense beside Max's vigilant form. Both boy and dog maintaining watch until dawn lightens the sky to pearl gray. The moment morning provides enough visibility, Jacob slips outside to investigate, Max following closely as they circle to the back porch where undeniable evidence confirms his fears. Clear boot prints in the soft earth beside the steps, a dropped lockpick gleaming dully in the grass, and most disturbingly, a small electronic device attached beneath the porch railing, some kind of surveillance equipment that suggests their watcher has resources and intentions far beyond simple curiosity. With trembling fingers, Jacob removes the device and pockets it, his mind racing as he realizes the danger is no longer theoretical but immediate and real, and his mother's secrets now hunted with professional determination that makes his own position increasingly precarious. In this isolated cabin with only a preoccupied uncle and loyal dog standing between him and whoever prowls the surrounding forest with lockpicks and surveillance equipment. The official Forest Service truck that pulls up to the cabin the following afternoon sends Jacob's heart racing until he notices the driver, a woman in her late 30s with sun-weathered skin and a practical braid of dark hair falling over one shoulder of her green uniform. Max, who has maintained constant vigilance since their midnight visitor, surprises Jacob by wagging his tail as the ranger approaches, his usual wariness toward strangers notably absent as the woman kneels to greet him with obvious dog-handling experience. "You must be Elena's son," she says, rising to extend her hand to Jacob with a warm smile that reaches her eyes. "I'm Ranger Sarah Blackwood. I knew your mother for many years. We grew up in these mountains together before I joined the Forest Service." Jacob accepts her handshake cautiously, uncertainty warring with the instinctive trust prompted by Max's unusual acceptance and the genuine sadness that flickers across her face at the mention of his mother. "I've been noticing some unusual activity in this area lately," she continues, glancing around the clearing with professional assessment. "Unregistered vehicles parked after hours, reports from hikers about men who don't look equipped for recreation, asking questions about private properties, including this cabin." Her directness catches Jacob off guard, but something in her steady gaze encourages honesty. "Someone was watching the cabin yesterday, and I think they tried breaking in last night," he admits, pulling the small surveillance device from his pocket. "I found this under the back porch this morning." Sarah's expression sharpens as she examines the device, her casual demeanor shifting to alert professionalism. "This is sophisticated equipment, not something casual troublemakers would use," she observes, pocketing the device before checking her radio and scanning the tree line with new intensity. Uncle Robert emerges from the cabin, his initial suspicion at the official vehicle melting into transparent relief when he spots Sarah, clearly viewing her presence as an opportunity to voice his complaints about the isolation and strange noises that have disturbed his sleep. While his uncle monopolizes the ranger with questions about property lines and local regulations, Sarah manages to slip Jacob her card with a handwritten number on the back, murmuring, "Call my personal cell if anything else happens, anytime, day or night." When Uncle Robert returns inside to retrieve property documents he insists the ranger must see, Sarah kneels beside Jacob and speaks quickly, her voice low and urgent. "Your mother and I were close once, before the council formed and everything changed. Elena contacted me 3 days before the accident, saying she needed to show me something important, but she never made it to our meeting point." Her eyes dart toward the cabin before continuing, "I don't believe her death was accidental, Jacob, and I don't think you're safe here with just your uncle for protection." Max presses against Jacob's leg as Sarah rises, her official demeanor returning seamlessly when Uncle Robert reappears waving papers, but the weight of her words settles into Jacob's chest like stone. Later, as the Forest Service truck disappears down the gravel road, Jacob finds himself holding Max's collar for support, overwhelmed by the first adult who seems to share his suspicions and the first potential ally in the increasingly dangerous mystery surrounding his mother's research. That evening, after Uncle Robert falls asleep, watching baseball on his laptop, Jacob slips into the secret room and searches through his mother's journals until he finds what he's looking for, several entries mentioning Sarah B. with affection and trust, confirming the ranger's connection to his mother and providing Jacob with something he's desperately needed since discovering the hidden room, hope that he might not have to face whatever's coming entirely alone. The small cafe in town bustles with Saturday morning customers, providing perfect cover for Jacob's meeting with Ranger Sarah, arranged via text after he convinced Uncle Robert he needed supplies from the general store. Max sits alertly at their feet beneath the corner booth, his presence permitted after Sarah's quiet word with the cafe owner who clearly respects the Forest Service uniform. "Your mother was extraordinary," Sarah begins, her coffee untouched as she leans forward, voice lowered despite the ambient noise. "We grew up exploring these mountains together, but it was Elena who first discovered the evidence of something special hidden here, ancient markers that matched local indigenous stories passed down through generations." She pauses, studying Jacob's face as if weighing how much to reveal, then continues with apparent decision. "There's a natural spring deep within the northern cave system that contains minerals in a combination science can't fully explain. The water has properties that accelerate healing and restore balance to living systems. I've seen it transform blighted forest patches and heal injuries that should have taken months in mere days." Jacob thinks of his mother's research, the maps and journals filled with coordinates and observations, suddenly understanding the purpose behind her meticulous documentation. Raymond, Two Hawks' ancestors, had protected knowledge of the spring for centuries, Sarah continues, but increased development and resource exploration in the region made him reach out to select outsiders who could help preserve it in the modern world. Your mother was the first person he approached, followed by 5 others with useful skills and connections, including me with my position in the Forest Service. Together we formed what Elena named the Council of 7. She withdraws a worn photograph from her pocket, a copy of the same image Jacob found in the hidden room, the 7 figures standing proudly before the mine entrance. "We swore to protect the spring from exploitation, using our various positions to redirect attention from that area of the mountains, creating conservation easements and habitat designations to prevent commercial development." Her expression darkens as she taps one figure in the photo. But Lawrence Merrick changed over time. He began arguing we should study the water's properties more aggressively, publish findings that would bring scientific recognition. When the council voted against him, he seemed to accept the decision, but your mother discovered he'd been meeting with pharmaceutical company representatives, promising to deliver samples and location information. Jacob's fingers tighten around his hot chocolate mug as pieces fall into place. His mother's increasing paranoia in her journal entries, the surveillance of the cabin, Dr. Merrick's convenient appearance after her death. "Mom found out he was betraying the council," he says. Not a question, but a confirmation. Sarah nods grimly. "Elena contacted each of us individually about her suspicions, gathering evidence before confronting him. The day before she was scheduled to present her findings to the council, her brakes failed on Mountain Pass Road." Her voice catches slightly, eyes shining with restrained emotion. "The official report called it an accident, brake line corroded by harsh mountain weather, but your mother had her car meticulously maintained. She knew the mountains weren't forgiving of mechanical failures." Max whines softly, pressing against Jacob's legs as if sensing his distress, the confirmation of his worst suspicions landing like physical pain. "The spring remains protected for now," Sarah concludes, covering Jacob's hand with her own calloused one. "But Merrick is getting desperate. As your mother's heir, you legally own land containing one of the access points to the cave system. He needs your property, which explains his connection to your uncle and the pressure to sell quickly." She squeezes his hand once before releasing it. "Elena left safeguards in place. Raymond and I have been watching over things, but we need your help, Jacob. Your mother believed you were meant to continue her work with the council, despite your age. That's why she left everything to you, why she made arrangements for Max to become your companion." Jacob glances down at his German shepherd with new understanding, realizing his mother's final gift was not just a beloved pet, but a guardian specifically chosen to protect her son as he stepped into her legacy as the newest member of the Council of 7. The forest stretches endless and green beyond the ranger station windows as Sarah spreads topographical maps across her desk, her finger tracing the complex cave system that winds beneath the mountain range. "Your mother spent months creating false trails," she explains as Jacob leans closer. Max settled watchfully by the door. "She removed markers, planted misleading evidence, and relocated the main access points in her documentation, all to prevent Merrick from finding the spring if he ever got hold of her research." Jacob studies the intricate network of underground passages, understanding now why his mother's maps contained contradictions and deliberate gaps, the true paths hidden within layers of misdirection. She suspected him for over a year, Sarah continues, her voice tightening with controlled anger. Elena noticed small things first. Equipment moved in the research cache, pages disturbed in specific notebooks, questions from locals about strangers asking about cave systems. When she placed trackers in her journals, her suspicions were confirmed. Someone was photographing her research when she wasn't around. The betrayal cuts deeper as Sarah reveals how Dr. Merrick had methodically documented the spring's unusual properties through secret tests, collecting water samples during council monitoring visits under the guise of routine pH testing, then sending the samples to private labs funded by Elysian Springs Corporation, APA, a pharmaceutical subsidiary specializing in wellness products, with annual revenues exceeding $2 billion. The corporation offered him $5 million and a research directorship, Sarah says, disgust evident in her voice. All for the location coordinates and exclusive access rights to what they're calling the most significant natural resource discovery of the decade. They've already filed preliminary patents on the molecular structure of the water, claiming manufacturing processes for synthetic replication. Jacob thinks of his mother's final journal entries, her growing fear as she worked against time to protect something precious, the weight of responsibility falling to him now as her son. What exactly would happen if they found it? He asks, needing to understand the true stakes. Sarah's expression darkens as she pulls out satellite images showing pristine mountain wilderness from 5 years ago, compared with current photos of clear-cut corporate water bottling operations in other regions, roads carved through forests, massive processing facilities perched on formerly untouched ridgelines, fleets of trucks moving product to market while surrounding ecosystems wither from redirected water sources. The spring isn't just valuable for its healing properties, she explains. According to Raymond, it's a key water source for the entire region's underground system. Commercializing it would devastate the ecological balance of these mountains. She hesitates before adding softly, and the indigenous communities believe the spring is literally alive, conscious in some way we don't understand, and connected to the health of the land and its people for thousands of years. The responsibility settles heavier on Jacob's shoulders as he recognizes what his mother died protecting, not just a valuable resource but the living heart of the mountain itself. Mom's last journal said she hid something important with Raymond. Jacob offers, thinking of the coded notebook's references to a final safeguard. Sarah nods, a spark of hope lighting her eyes. Elena created what she called a map key, a device that, when combined with her research, reveals the true location while rendering all other paths obsolete. She gave it to Raymond for safekeeping days before the accident. She checks her watch with sudden urgency, gathering the maps with practiced efficiency. We need to move quickly. Your uncle met with Merrick and a corporate representative this morning. They're accelerating the timeline to purchase your property. Outside, thunder rumbles across distant peaks as storm clouds gather, mirroring the darkness spreading through Jacob as he processes the full extent of Dr. Merrick's betrayal and its consequences for his mother. We're going to see Raymond now, Sarah declares, her tone leaving no room for argument. He's been waiting to meet you since Elena's funeral. The cabin creaks with nighttime mountain sounds as Jacob lies awake in his sleeping bag. Max's warm body pressed vigilantly against his side, both too tense for sleep after their meeting with Raymond Two Hawks, and the revelations about his mother's final efforts to protect the spring. Outside, rain patters against the roof in rhythmic waves, occasionally punctuated by distant thunder rolling across the mountains like ancient drums. Uncle Robert had been unusually quiet at dinner, avoiding Jacob's questions about his meeting in town, his evasiveness only confirming Sarah's warnings about accelerated plans to sell the property. The first unusual sound comes just past midnight, the subtle crunch of tires on wet gravel, approaching with headlights extinguished, followed by car doors closing with muffled precision rather than casual slams. Max is instantly alert, a low warning growl building in his throat as he positions himself between Jacob and the front door. Someone's here, Jacob whispers, heart hammering as he slips from his sleeping bag and peers through rain-streaked windows to see shadowy figures moving purposefully toward the cabin. Without hesitation, he grabs his backpack containing his mother's journal and the metal box, gesturing for Max to follow as he silently slides back the rug covering the trapdoor to the hidden room. They've barely closed the trapdoor above them when the cabin door crashes open, followed by heavy footsteps and Uncle Robert's startled shout of protest. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" and his uncle demands, voice sharp with indignation rather than fear. "Mr. Harmon, please calm yourself," comes the smooth, cultured response that Jacob instantly recognizes as Dr. Merrick. "Our survey team has legal authorization to assess geological formations on this property. The paperwork was explained to you this morning." More footsteps cross the floor above as Uncle Robert splutters objections about middle of the night and prior notification, his bluster suggesting he's caught between genuine surprise at the intrusion and prior knowledge of these men's intentions. "The boy and the dog, where are they?" a new voice asks, its tone clipped and professional. "My nephew's staying with friends in town tonight," Uncle Robert answers too quickly, the lie transparent in his nervous delivery. From the darkness of the hidden room, Jacob watches through small gaps in the floorboards as flashlight beams sweep across the cabin, illuminating at least 4 men in dark clothing methodically searching through cabinets and furniture. "The geological survey team requires access to all structures on the property, Dr. Merrick states with thinly veiled impatience, including any subfloor spaces or storage areas. Jacob's breath catches as one searcher moves directly overhead, boots stopping precisely above the trapdoor, while another man taps methodically on walls, listening for hollow sounds that might indicate hidden spaces. Max remains perfectly still beside him, the dog's training evident in his absolute silence, despite the tension vibrating through his powerful body. "I told you, there's nothing here," Uncle Robert insists with increasing desperation. Elena was just a folklore researcher. All her university stuff is in her campus office. Jacob watches through the crack as Dr. Merrick approaches his uncle, their faces briefly illuminated by crossing flashlight beams. "Mr. Harmon, your cooperation was purchased quite explicitly this morning," he says, voice dropping to a dangerous softness. "The agreed-upon finder's fee only applies if we locate what we're looking for." The betrayal lands like a physical blow as Jacob realizes his uncle has deliberately sold them out, the man's financial motivations overriding any family loyalty. The search continues for nearly an hour, men systematically examining every inch of the cabin while Uncle Robert watches helplessly, his initial protests fading to uncomfortable silence. They finally depart with threats to return with proper equipment tomorrow, leaving Jacob trembling in the darkness of his mother's secret room, understanding with painful clarity that he cannot trust his own uncle and that their time to act has been reduced to mere hours before Dr. Merrick's team returns with whatever proper equipment might help them discover what lies beneath the cabin floor. First light barely brushes the eastern sky when Sarah's Forest Service truck rolls silently up to the back of the cabin, headlights off and engine cut immediately as Jacob slips out the rear door with Max close behind and his backpack heavy with essential supplies, clothes, food, his mother's coded journal, and the mysterious metal box from the waterfall cave. Uncle Robert remains sleeping in his bedroom, exhaustion and half a bottle of whiskey, ensuring he won't discover his nephew's absence until well into the morning, by which time they'll be deep in the mountain wilderness beyond easy tracking. "Did you leave the note?" Sarah whispers as Jacob climbs into the passenger seat, Max settling in the back among ranger equipment and emergency supplies. Jacob nods, thinking of the deliberately vague message he'd left on the kitchen table, staying with a friend for a few days, designed to buy them precious time without triggering immediate concern or search efforts. The truck moves slowly down the access road before turning onto a narrow Forest Service trail, rarely used by public vehicles, Sarah's expert handling guiding them deeper into the mountains as dawn gradually illuminates dense forests and misty valleys stretching endlessly below them. "Raymond is meeting us at Thunder Basin Lookout," she explains, checking her mirrors frequently for any sign of pursuit. "The council maintained emergency protocols for situations like this. Your mother helped design them years ago." The revelation sends a fresh wave of grief through Jacob as he imagines his mother planning escape. Routes, creating safeguards against betrayal, preparing contingencies that would eventually protect her son rather than herself. What exactly are we looking for? He asks, watching the familiar landscape of his childhood summers transform into remote wilderness he's never explored. Sarah's expression grows solemn as she navigates a particularly steep section of trail. Elena created something she called the Confluence Key, a device that, when used correctly at specific coordinates, reveals the true entrance to the spring's central chamber, while simultaneously triggering mechanisms to seal off false entrances and misleading passages. She glances at him briefly before returning her attention to the treacherous road. Your mother was brilliant with mechanical systems. She designed a series of water-powered triggers throughout the cave system that would essentially reconfigure the accessible pathways, rendering her falsified maps useless to anyone who obtained them. The truck emerges into a small clearing where a weather-beaten fire lookout tower rises above the tree line, a solitary figure waiting on its lowest platform. Raymond Two Hawks, his lined face solemn as he watches their approach. Merrick's people have filed emergency mineral rights claims on 3 adjacent properties. Sarah continues, parking behind the tower where the vehicle won't be visible from below. They're bringing in ground-penetrating radar equipment this afternoon. We have hours, not days, before they locate the hidden room and everything your mother stored there. Jacob's stomach twists with the realization that the sanctuary containing his mother's research will soon be compromised, all her careful documentation falling into the hands of those who would exploit rather than protect what she died defending. Max jumps from the truck as soon as Sarah opens the door, trotting immediately to Raymond and sitting respectfully at the elder's feet, receiving a gentle hand on his head in greeting. The dog remembers his training, Raymond observes as Jacob approaches, his deep voice carrying the weight of years and wisdom. Your mother chose him specifically for you, from a bloodline that has guarded the sacred waters for generations. He turns toward the endless expanse of mountain wilderness stretching before them, his weathered hand gesturing toward distant peaks. We must reach the northern convergence by nightfall. It is there that your mother hid the Confluence Key, and there that you will understand your true inheritance. Jacob Hayes, last of the 7 and son of the waters. The mountain trail narrows to little more than a game path. As they climb higher, Raymond leading with the sureness of someone who has traveled these routes for decades, Sarah guarding their rear with practiced vigilance, while Jacob and Max move between them through dappled forest light. Jacob's legs burn with the effort of the continuous ascent, but determination pushes him forward, each step carrying him closer to understanding his mother's final work and the legacy she entrusted to him alone. The entrance lies beyond the lightning pine, Raymond announces as they emerge into a small clearing where a massive pine tree stands scorched and split by some ancient strike, its surviving half still reaching defiantly skyward. The moment they approach this natural landmark, Max's behavior shifts noticeably, his posture becoming more alert, his movements more deliberate, as if some instinctive knowledge has awakened within him. Your mother said the dog would remember, Raymond remarks, observing Max with knowing eyes. His ancestors have guarded the sacred waters since before my grandfather's time. Without hesitation, Max moves ahead of the group, leading them around the lightning-struck tree to a dense thicket that appears impenetrable until the German Shepherd pushes through a specific section, revealing a narrow passage hidden by the strategic growth of branches. He knows the way, Sarah whispers with quiet amazement as they follow the dog through the concealed opening and along a winding path that eventually reveals a dark fissure in the mountainside, the cave entrance, half concealed by natural rock formations and strategic plantings that make it nearly invisible unless approached from precisely the right angle. Max pauses at the threshold, looking back at Jacob with an expectant gaze that somehow communicates both encouragement and warning. Inside, the temperature drops immediately as they activate headlamps, illuminating a passage that begins narrow but gradually widens into a complex system of interconnected chambers, the walls occasionally marked with subtle symbols that Raymond identifies as ancient trail markers used by his people for generations. Your mother mapped this entire system, Sarah explains, her voice hushed in the cathedral-like space. She discovered pathways forgotten even by tribal elders, passages that had been sealed for centuries. Max moves with increasing confidence through the labyrinthine tunnels, occasionally stopping to wait for the humans when the path splits, his behavior suggesting not exploration but recognition, as if he navigates from memory rather than discovery. When a distant rumble echoes through the cave, Jacob initially mistakes it for thunder, until Sarah's expression sharpens with concern. "That's not weather," she says, exchanging meaningful glances with Raymond. Ground-penetrating radar creates vibrations when used at high intensity. The implications send a chill through Jacob. Merrick's team has brought their equipment to the mountain sooner than expected, their search for the spring's access points already underway. Max's demeanor changes instantly at the vibrations, his protective instincts visibly heightening as he positions himself closer to Jacob, occasionally emitting low growls when the rumbling intensifies. In a particularly large chamber where multiple passages converge, the German shepherd suddenly freezes, hackles raised as he stares intently down one specific tunnel, his warning growl unmistakable. "He senses something," Raymond whispers, immediately extinguishing his headlamp and gesturing for the others to do the same. In the perfect darkness that follows, they hear it. Distant voices and the clatter of equipment, researchers or explorers approaching from a different entrance to the cave system. Merrick's survey team. Sarah breathes, barely audible. They've found one of the secondary access points. With gentle pressure on Jacob's shoulder, she guides him toward a different passage while Max takes the lead once more, the dog somehow navigating the absolute darkness with unwavering confidence, occasionally returning to nudge Jacob's hand when the boy slows with uncertainty. The German shepherd leads them through increasingly narrow passages that Raymond confirms aren't marked on any official maps, eventually bringing them to a chamber where crystal formations catch and amplify even the smallest light, creating an otherworldly glow that reveals ancient paintings on the walls, concentric circles, flowing water patterns, and what appears to be a large canine figure standing guard over a central pool. "The Guardian Chamber," Raymond explains with reverence. "Your mother rediscovered this place last spring, a sacred space where my ancestors honored the spirit protectors of the waters." As if recognizing his ancestral purpose, Max walks directly to the painted canine figure and sits before it in perfect alignment, his posture regal and somehow ancient, a living embodiment of the Guardian depicted on the cave wall thousands of years earlier. The Guardian Chamber glows with ethereal blue light emanating from crystalline formations in the walls as Raymond carefully unpacks ancient materials from his weathered leather bag, a clay bowl, bundles of dried herbs, and a small wooden box containing what appears to be red ochre. "Your mother understood the importance of the Guardian bloodline," he explains to Jacob while preparing these ritual items, his movements deliberate and practiced. "When the last Guardian passed 4 years ago, Elena helped locate the remaining descendants and supported our efforts to maintain the lineage that has protected the sacred waters for generations." Max sits with unusual stillness beside the painted canine figure on the wall, his intelligent eyes tracking Raymond's preparations with apparent understanding rather than mere curiosity. Sarah touches Jacob's shoulder gently, directing his attention to smaller pictographs surrounding the central Guardian image. Scenes depicting silver-gray wolves or dogs leading humans to water sources, standing between people and danger, and most strikingly, a sequence showing the animals detecting impurities or threats to water that humans cannot perceive. The Guardian bloodline was originally wolf, gradually bred with domestic dogs over centuries while maintaining specific traits, she explains quietly. Enhanced senses far beyond typical canines, unusual longevity, and what the elders call water memory, an ability to detect changes in water composition so subtle that our most advanced scientific equipment can barely measure them. Raymond approaches Max with the clay bowl, containing a mixture of water and crushed herbs, offering it to the German shepherd who sniffs once before drinking deeply, a tremor passing through his powerful body as the mixture takes effect. "The spring water activates certain capabilities in the Guardians," Raymond explains, watching Max with knowing eyes. Elena discovered it was actually a specific mineral composition that triggers dormant genetic traits in the bloodline, science confirming what our stories have always told. Max rises and shakes himself as if awakening from deep sleep, his posture changing subtly, shoulders squaring, head lifting with new awareness, his entire presence somehow more commanding in the crystal-illuminated chamber. When he approaches Jacob, the boy gasps involuntarily at the change in his companion's eyes, the amber irises now containing flecks of luminescent blue that catch the chamber's light like embedded stars. "He recognizes you as his bonded human now," Raymond says with quiet approval. "Elena arranged for him to come to you specifically, knowing you would need his protection and guidance once she was gone." The elder retrieves a worn leather journal from his bag, handing it reverently to Jacob. "Your mother recorded the Guardian training protocols here, techniques developed over generations and refined with her scientific understanding. She wanted you to continue what she began." Jacob accepts the journal with trembling hands, recognizing his mother's handwriting, filling the pages with observations, training methods, and detailed notes about Max's lineage dating back 12 generations. Sarah moves to the chamber's far wall, where water trickles down the rock face into a small basin, collecting samples in test tubes that she examines with a small electronic device. "The mineral concentration is changing," she announces with concern, studying the readings. "The spring is responding to external interference. Merrick's survey equipment must be affecting the underground water channels." Raymond's expression darkens at this news, his weathered hands forming determined fists. "We must reach the confluence chamber before they disrupt the entire system." He turns to Jacob with unexpected urgency. "Your mother installed protection mechanisms that can only be activated by her blood, by you, with the Guardian's assistance." Max moves to stand beside Jacob, the dog's newly awakened awareness palpable in how he positions himself, protective yet deferential, a sentinel awaiting command from his rightful partner. "The connection between Guardian and Hayes' bloodline is ancient and binding," Raymond explains as they gather their supplies, preparing to venture deeper into the cave system. "It was no accident that your family settled on this mountain generations ago. No coincidence that your mother dedicated her life to protecting the waters. Some bonds transcend time and understanding." As they exit the Guardian chamber following Max's confident lead, Jacob places his hand on the German shepherd's head, feeling a subtle electric connection that hadn't existed before, a silent communication beyond words or training. The dog looks up at him with those changed eyes, and Jacob understands with sudden clarity that Max has always been more than a pet, more than a companion. He is a guardian awakened to his ancestral purpose, bound to Jacob through bloodlines and sacred duty stretching back through centuries of mountain history. The descent into the mountain's heart follows passages increasingly adorned with ancient markings, each tunnel narrower than the last until they must proceed single file. Max, leading with unwavering confidence despite paths that occasionally require them to wade through knee-deep underground streams or squeeze through tight limestone formations. Jacob feels the air changing as they progress deeper, becoming richer, carrying an electric quality that raises goosebumps on his arms and creates a metallic tang on his tongue that's both strange and oddly familiar. "We're approaching the convergence point," Raymond whispers, his voice carrying reverence as they emerge into a small antechamber where multiple water channels unite in a swirling pattern before disappearing through a crevice barely wide enough for a human to pass. Max pauses at this threshold, turning to look at Jacob with expectant eyes that now glow visibly blue in the darkness, waiting for something only the dog seems to understand. "Your blood opens the final way," Sarah explains quietly, indicating small, deliberately carved indentations in the rock beside the crevice. Elena designed the mechanism to respond only to Hayes' DNA, a molecular lock and key. With trembling fingers, Jacob follows Raymond's instructions, pressing his palm against the rough stone surface where nearly invisible needle-like projections prick his skin, drawing tiny droplets of blood that the porous rock absorbs immediately. For several heartbeats, nothing happens. Then a subtle vibration runs through the surrounding stone as hidden mechanisms activate, the narrow crevice widening silently to reveal a passageway that would have remained invisible to anyone searching without the precise knowledge they carry. Max enters first, his silver-gray coat catching strange luminescence that seems to emanate from the very walls as they follow the guardian dog through the newly revealed passage, descending a series of natural stone steps worn smooth by ancient use. The chamber that opens before them steals Jacob's breath entirely, a vast cathedral-like cavern where stalactites and stalagmites create natural columns surrounding a central pool approximately 30 feet across, its surface perfectly still and emanating a blue-green luminescence that illuminates the entire space without need for their headlamps. The water appears both impossibly clear and somehow dense with living energy, occasional ripples of brighter light moving beneath its surface like conscious patterns rather than random reflections. "The sacred spring," Raymond announces softly, dropping to one knee at the chamber's edge, in a gesture of respect echoed by Sarah. While Max sits alertly at attention, his guardian posture both protective and reverential before the glowing waters, Jacob approaches the pool's edge with instinctive caution, drawn forward by something that feels like recognition, despite never having seen this place before. "Your family has protected this spring for 7 generations, Sarah explains, as Jacob kneels beside the luminescent water. "Your great-great-grandfather was the first Hayes to join the indigenous guardians after discovering the spring while mining. Instead of exploiting it, he recognized its sacred nature and pledged his bloodline to its protection." The water seems to respond to Jacob's proximity, the glow intensifying directly before him as if acknowledging his presence, creating patterns that almost resemble written language across its surface. "The spring exists at a unique geological convergence," Sarah continues, her scientific background evident in her explanation. "Multiple mineral veins intersect precisely at this chamber, creating a water composition that defies conventional chemical analysis. Crystal structures that can apparently repair cellular damage, restore neural pathways, and accelerate natural healing beyond anything medical science can currently achieve." Jacob watches, transfixed, as Max approaches the pool and drinks briefly from its glowing surface, the luminescence temporarily visible through the dog's throat as the liquid descends. "The guardians receive their gifts from the waters," Raymond adds, observing the German shepherd with knowing eyes. "Each drink strengthens their bond with the spring and enhances their protective abilities." As if demonstrating this truth, Max returns to Jacob's side with renewed alertness, his senses visibly heightened, body tensing suddenly toward one of the chamber entrances, seconds before they hear it. Distant mechanical sounds echoing through the cave system, the unmistakable evidence that Merrick's team is getting closer to their sanctuary, bringing with them the threat of exploitation that would destroy this ancient wonder his mother died protecting. The sacred chamber's serenity shatters as echoes of mechanical equipment and voices reverberate through the connecting tunnels, growing steadily louder with each passing minute. "They've found the western access point," Sarah whispers, checking her radio with a grimace. The Forest Service perimeter team reports multiple vehicles with corporate logos arriving. They've brought serious equipment and at least a dozen personnel. Raymond moves with surprising agility for his age, retrieving items from hidden niches around the chamber, small mechanical devices that Jacob recognizes from his mother's technical drawings, designed to trigger the protective systems she had installed throughout the cave network. Max stands alert at the chamber entrance, his enhanced senses clearly tracking the intruder's progress through distant passages, occasional low growls rumbling from his chest as he positions himself protectively between the approaching sounds and Jacob. "We need to activate the final safeguard," Raymond urges, pressing a small copper device into Jacob's hand, an intricate mechanical key with components that align with markings around the spring's edge. "Your mother designed it to recognize both your DNA and the Guardian's presence." Before Jacob can insert the key into its designated position, the first beam of artificial light cuts through a connecting tunnel, followed by voices giving technical directions about equipment setup and water sampling protocols. Max's growl deepens as Dr. Merrick emerges from the passage, flanked by 4 men in corporate uniforms carrying scientific equipment and, more alarmingly, 2 others with holstered sidearms and security insignias. Ah, the remaining council members. How convenient to find you all together, Merrick announces, his cultured voice echoing through the sacred chamber as he surveys the glowing spring with undisguised triumph. And young Jacob, too, with Elena's precious guardian dog. A family reunion of sorts, though sadly incomplete. The casual cruelty in his reference to Jacob's mother sends a wave of anger through the boy, his fingers tightening around the copper key still concealed in his palm. This site is protected under multiple federal statutes, Sarah interjects, stepping forward with official authority despite being outnumbered. Your presence constitutes criminal trespass on protected watershed lands and violation of Native American sacred site provisions. Merrick's laugh holds no humor as he gestures dismissively. My employers have secured mineral rights and access permissions through entirely legal channels. Your obstructionist tactics have failed, Ranger Blackwood. His attention shifts to Jacob, something almost like regret flickering across his features. Your mother was remarkably stubborn, you know. She could have partnered with us, received proper credit and compensation for her discoveries. Instead, she chose to hide this miraculous resource from the world, from people who could benefit from its healing properties. Jacob feels cold certainty spreading through him as the pieces align. You arranged the brake line failure, he states. Not a question, but an accusation that causes momentary silence to fall across the chamber. She confronted you about selling information to the corporation, and you had her killed. Merrick's expression hardens, his pretense of civility dropping away like a discarded mask. Elena discovered my arrangements with Elysian Springs and threatened to expose everything to the council and authorities. She became a liability we couldn't afford, especially when she began implementing these elaborate protective measures throughout the cave system. The casual admission of murder sends Sarah lunging toward Merrick, only to be restrained by the armed security personnel, while Raymond moves protectively closer to Jacob and Max growls with increasing menace, the blue glow in his eyes intensifying with the threat to his human companion. Your uncle has already signed preliminary transfer documents for your property, Merrick continues, seemingly unconcerned by the tension surrounding him. Once our survey team maps these caverns and establishes the optimal extraction points, Elysian Springs will begin construction of the most advanced wellness water facility in the world. Jacob feels the weight of the copper key in his hand, understanding now why his mother created such elaborate safeguards and why she ensured he would inherit both her property and her guardian companion. With subtle movement, he slides his hand into Max's fur, feeling the dog's muscles tense in responsive understanding as they begin inching backward toward the spring's edge where the activation point waits, their last hope to implement his mother's final protective measure. Before Merrick's team can fully document and exploit the sacred waters that have sustained these mountains for countless generations. Tension fills the chamber as Merrick signals his security team to secure the area. Their movements, professional and practiced as they establish positions around the perimeter, effectively cutting off all escape routes while technicians begin setting up water sampling equipment at the spring's edge. The preliminary analysis will take approximately 30 minutes, one lab-coated technician informs Merrick, uncasing sophisticated portable equipment. We'll need undisturbed access to multiple points around the pool. Jacob catches Sarah's subtle nod toward the southern tunnel, their potential escape route if they can somehow create a distraction. Raymond stands unnaturally still, his weathered hands working something small and mechanical partially concealed in his palm, his lips moving in silent prayer, or perhaps instruction, as he maintains eye contact with Jacob across the chamber. Max remains positioned between Jacob and the nearest security personnel, his posture changing subtly as he drinks again from the spring's edge, the luminescent water visibly pulsing through his body for several seconds before seemingly absorbing into his muscular frame. Restrain the old man and the ranger, Merrick orders casually, gesturing toward Raymond and Sarah. The boy stays with me. Elena would have shared her fail-safe protocols with her son. As the guards move to comply, Max suddenly transforms from alert guardian to something altogether more formidable. Tatigdine, his size appearing to increase as his fur bristles with energy, the blue glow in his eyes intensifying until it illuminates his entire face with otherworldly light. The first security guard reaches for Jacob's arm, and Max reacts with explosive speed, his jaws clamping around the man's wrist with precisely controlled pressure, enough to immobilize without maiming, while simultaneously positioning his body to block the second guard's approach. "Control that animal," Merrick shouts as chaos erupts within the confined space. Max moving with impossible speed and awareness, somehow engaging multiple opponents without ever leaving Jacob unprotected. Raymond seizes the moment to activate whatever device he had been concealing, tossing it into the spring where it sinks with a flash of blue light, triggering an immediate reaction. The water's luminescence intensifies dramatically as tremors run through the surrounding rock, small streams beginning to divert through previously invisible channels in the chamber walls. "Run," Raymond shouts to Jacob as sections of the chamber entrance start shifting, stone grinding against stone as his mother's protective systems activate. Max's extraordinary defense continues as he moves like living lightning, his enhanced abilities allowing him to anticipate and counter each threat with uncanny precision, creating a protective barrier that gives Jacob and Sarah precious seconds to maneuver toward the southern passage. One guard draws his weapon only to have Max launch against his arm with surgical precision, teeth closing around his wrist exactly where nerves disable the hand's gripping ability, the gun clattering uselessly to the stone floor. Jacob reaches the copper key mechanism just as Merrick lunges toward him, the man's face contorted with desperate rage. "That water is worth billions. Your mother died for this stubborn idealism. And for what?" he snarls, fingers grasping for Jacob's arm. Before Merrick can touch him, Max is there, interposing his body with a warning growl that freezes the man mid-motion. The German Shepherd's transformed eyes glowing with ancestral purpose and protective fury get the evidence to Sarah's contact. Raymond calls to Jacob, still struggling with security personnel, as the chamber continues reconfiguring around them, water levels rising in strategic areas to block certain passages. Jacob fumbles with the copper key, aligning it with markings his mother had designed to respond to her bloodline, feeling rather than hearing the mechanism engage as it recognizes his genetic signature. Immediately, the spring's glow intensifies dramatically, energy pulsing through connected channels as the central pool begins a controlled drainage sequence, the sacred water disappearing into protective depths beyond corporate reach. "No!" Merrick screams, lunging past Max toward the receding water only to be cut off as a section of floor suddenly shifts, creating a barrier between the spring and the intruders. Sarah grabs Jacob's arm, pulling him toward the southern passage while Max continues his extraordinary defense, the German Shepherd somehow everywhere at once, herding the corporate team away from their escape route with strategic lunges and intimidating displays that require no actual violence to achieve their purpose. "Raymond will meet us at the convergence point," Sarah whispers urgently as they flee into the tunnel, the sounds of confusion and Merrick's enraged shouting fading behind them as Max finally disengages from the confrontation to follow his human companion, the guardian dog's enhanced abilities ensuring no pursuers can navigate the rapidly changing passageways as his mother's protective systems continue their automated reconfiguration of the entire cave network. Afternoon sunlight feels blinding after hours in the cave system as Jacob, Sarah, and Max emerge from a hidden exit point nearly 2 miles from where they entered, the mountain's eastern face offering relative safety from Merrick's team still struggling with the reconfiguring passages below. Sarah's radio crackles with updates from Forest Service colleagues maintaining perimeter surveillance, reporting corporate vehicles arriving with additional equipment and what appears to be mining personnel. "Your mother's safeguards are working," Sarah explains as they make their way down a steep game trail, her expression a mixture of relief and concern. "The spring's waters have receded to the deepest chamber and the access points are shifting every 30 minutes, exactly as Elena designed. But Merrick's resources are substantial. They'll eventually map the changes and find ways to bypass the protections." Max stays unnervingly close to Jacob, the German Shepherd's enhanced state gradually normalizing with distance from the spring, though his eyes retain faint traces of luminescent blue, and his protective vigilance remains heightened, constantly scanning their surroundings while leading them along paths invisible to human perception. "Raymond will find his way out," Sarah assures Jacob, noting his worried glances backward. "He knows these mountains better than anyone. Merrick's team won't catch him." The ranger leads them to a small cabin nearly hidden among dense pines, a Forest Service emergency shelter rarely used and absent from public maps. Inside, basic supplies await: food, water, first aid equipment, along with a satellite phone that Sarah immediately uses to contact allies within federal agencies. Jacob sinks wearily onto a wooden bench, the events of the past hours catching up in a wave of exhaustion and emotion as the reality fully registers. His mother was murdered for protecting the spring, and the people responsible are still pursuing their plans with corporate backing and seeming impunity. "We need concrete evidence," Sarah says after completing her calls, frustration evident in her voice. "My supervisors believe me, but Elysian Springs has powerful lawyers and political connections. They've already filed injunctions against any interference with their geological survey activities." Max, who has been restlessly circling the cabin's interior, suddenly stops before Jacob's backpack, nosing it insistently with soft whines that demand attention. Following the guardian dog's prompting, Jacob opens his pack and removes the items he grabbed before fleeing the cabin: his mother's coded journal, the metal box from the waterfall cave, and the small leather pouch containing the carved river stone. Max focuses intently on the stone, pawing at it until Jacob removes it from its pouch, noticing for the first time that the carvings on its surface match patterns he saw around his mother's bedroom door frame at the cabin. "It's a key," he whispers with sudden understanding, "not for a lock but for a puzzle." Sarah watches curiously as Jacob explains his mother's passion for creating hidden compartments and puzzle boxes for his birthday gifts each year, always incorporating meaningful patterns and personal references that only he would recognize. The carvings around her bedroom door, they weren't decorative, they were instructions. Night falls as they make plans, waiting for Raymond while monitoring Forest Service reports about corporate activities at both the cave system and the cabin property. When the elderly guardian finally arrives shortly before midnight, he brings troubling news. Merrick's team has brought industrial equipment to the mountain and obtained emergency permits for resource extraction, based on claims of critical mineral deposits essential to national interests. Hope dims until Jacob remembers his mother's final journal entry about entrusting something important to Raymond before the accident. The elder's eyes light with recognition, reaching into his medicine pouch to extract a small data drive sealed in waterproof material. "Elena gave me this 3 days before she died," he explains, handing it reverently to Jacob. "She said it contained truth that would protect the waters if she could not." The drive connects to Sarah's laptop, revealing a video file labeled simply "Insurance." His mother's face fills the screen, her familiar features causing Jacob's throat to tighten with grief and longing as she speaks directly to the camera, her voice steady, despite the fear evident in her eyes. "My name is Dr. Elena Hayes, and I am recording this testimony because my life has been threatened following my discovery of corporate espionage and environmental crimes being committed by Elysian Springs Corporation through their agent, Dr. Lawrence Merrick. What follows is a methodical, scientifically precise documentation of everything: Merrick's betrayal of the council, corporate plans to exploit the spring regardless of environmental impact, explicit threats against her if she didn't cooperate, and most critically, recorded conversations where Merrick discusses eliminating problems and ensuring her silence. The evidence is comprehensive, damning, and admissible. His mother had created a perfect case against her eventual killers, hidden where only her son would think to look, using the stone key that now represents their hope for justice and the spring's continued protection from those who would destroy it in the name of profit. Dawn breaks over the mountain range as a convoy of official vehicles winds its way down forest roads toward civilization: 2 Forest Service trucks, a tribal police cruiser, and a federal marshal's SUV carrying Jacob, Max, Sarah, Raymond, and the precious evidence that represents their best hope for justice. The journey from hidden shelter to federal offices in the nearest city passes in a blur of exhaustion and tension, Jacob's hand never leaving Max's fur as the German Shepherd maintains his protective vigilance despite the relative safety of their official escort. Regional FBI offices buzz with activity upon their arrival, Jacob's mother's recorded testimony and supporting evidence creating immediate ripples through multiple agencies, Environmental Crimes Division, corporate fraud investigators, and homicide detectives all convening in a flurry of jurisdictional discussions and evidence processing protocols. Jacob watches through glass walls as his mother's face appears on screens throughout the office. Her methodical documentation of corporate conspiracy and environmental sabotage, commanding the full attention of federal agents who scribble notes and confer in serious tones. Elena prepared everything perfectly, Sarah explains quietly as they wait in a conference room, her ranger uniform replaced with borrowed civilian clothes that somehow make her look smaller, more vulnerable. Chain of custody documentation, witness affidavits, technical analyses. She built an airtight case because she knew exactly what would happen if she confronted Merrick directly. The events unfold with surprising speed after that. Federal agents descending on Elysian Springs corporate offices with warrants. Merrick and several executives taken into custody from the mountain site, where their extraction equipment now sits abandoned. And most satisfying of all, Uncle Robert's shocked face as agents escort him from the cabin in handcuffs. His role in facilitating access to protected land and concealing evidence making him an accessory after the fact. 3 days of statements, evidence review, and legal consultations culminate in a meeting with the U.S. Attorney, a stern-faced woman who explains the multiple federal charges being filed, conspiracy, corporate fraud, environmental crimes, and most significantly, the murder of Dr. Elena Hayes through deliberate tampering with her vehicle. Your mother's foresight was extraordinary, she tells Jacob, genuine respect evident in her voice. She created redundant evidence caches, established multiple witnesses, and documented everything meticulously. She made our case virtually bulletproof. The weeks that follow bring a whirlwind of activity as Jacob's temporary guardianship is transferred to Sarah through emergency court. The proceedings. The cabin property is placed under protective conservation status through combined federal and tribal declarations, recognizing its ecological and cultural significance, and a multi-agency task force establishes permanent monitoring of the cave system and watershed to prevent future exploitation attempts. Most meaningful to Jacob is the small ceremony held at the cabin clearing 1 month after their return from the mountain, where tribal elders, Forest Service officials, and newly appointed conservation trustees gather to officially establish the Elena Hayes Memorial Wilderness Preserve. 6,000 acres of mountain forest, watershed, and cave systems permanently protected from development through a combination of federal conservation easements, tribal sacred site designations, and environmental protection ordinances. Max stands proud beside Jacob throughout the ceremony, the German shepherd's posture reflecting his dual nature, loyal companion and ancient guardian. As Raymond presents Jacob with a hand-carved wooden plaque bearing his mother's name, alongside symbols representing water protection and eternal guardianship. Your mother's work continues through you, the elder tells him quietly as news cameras capture the moment for regional broadcasts. The story of corporate greed, environmental protection, and a boy's courage in continuing his mother's legacy, creating national headlines that ensure public attention will help maintain the protections they've established. Later that evening, as Jacob sits on the cabin porch with Max beside him and Sarah preparing dinner inside, their new family configuration still strange but increasingly comfortable, he watches sunset paint the mountains his mother loved in shades, gold and purple, understanding now why she fought so hard to protect this place and the secrets hidden beneath its ancient stones. We did it, Mom, he whispers, one hand resting on Max's head, feeling the German shepherd's comforting warmth against his side. The spring is safe, and so are the mountains, just like you wanted. Autumn paints the mountains in brilliant hues of crimson and gold, as Jacob sits cross-legged on a hand-woven blanket in the clearing behind his cabin, surrounded by 6 adults forming a perfect circle with him at its center. Max sitting attentively at his side with regal bearing that seems to reflect understanding of the ceremony's significance. Raymond stands before them, his weathered hands holding a carved wooden box containing 7 small river stones, each bearing symbols matching those found in the sacred cave. Since time beyond memory, the Council of 7 has existed to protect the sacred waters. The elder intones, his deep voice carrying through the clear mountain air. Today we restore what was broken by betrayal and consecrate a new circle of guardians who will continue this sacred trust. The gravity of the moment settles over Jacob as Raymond places the first stone before Sarah, whose Forest Service authority now extends to a special conservation detail specifically assigned to the newly established wilderness preserve. The second stone passes to Dr. Miriam Chen, a hydrologist who had independently documented unusual properties in the region's water systems and approached the investigation team with valuable scientific support. The third goes to Thomas Blackwood, Sarah's brother and a respected environmental attorney whose pro bono work secured the complex legal protections now surrounding the mountain watershed. The fourth stone is presented to Maria Two Hawks, Raymond's granddaughter and a tribal cultural preservation officer whose academic credentials and indigenous knowledge create a powerful bridge between scientific and traditional understanding of the spring's significance. The fifth recipient is James Littlecreek, a retired federal judge whose judicial connections and impeccable reputation helped fast-track the protection declarations through normally labyrinthine bureaucratic processes. The sixth stone passes to Raymond himself, who accepts it with the quiet dignity of one continuing an ancient tradition rather than receiving something new. When the elder finally stands before Jacob with the seventh stone, larger than the others and bearing more complex symbols, the significance of his inheritance finally crystallizes in its entirety. Elena Hayes carried this guardian stone for 15 years, Raymond explains, placing it gently in Jacob's palm, where it feels unexpectedly warm against his skin. Now it passes to her son, along with all the responsibilities and privileges of the council leadership. The weight of legacy settles over Jacob as Raymond explains what this truly means: access to special conservation funds established through his mother's careful planning, responsibility for coordinating ongoing protection efforts, and most sobering, the duty to identify and train future guardians who will eventually replace them all. Perhaps most surprising is the formal recognition of Max as an official guardian in his own right. The ceremony, including a special collar of woven leather and silver presented by Maria, who explains that throughout history, the guardian animals have always been considered equal members of the council, rather than mere companions to their human counterparts. The bond between Hayes blood and guardian blood creates protection stronger than either alone, she tells Jacob as she fastens the ceremonial collar around Max's neck, the German shepherd sitting with dignified patience that seems to acknowledge the honor being bestowed. After the formal ceremony concludes and the circle breaks into conversation about practical next steps, Sarah approaches Jacob with a small wooden box she explains was recovered from his mother's university office during the investigation. Elena left instructions that this should pass to you when you were ready to assume council leadership, she explains, her expression warm with pride as Jacob opens it to find a journal unlike his mother's others, bound in blue leather with silver clasps and filled with handwritten wisdom about council history, spring protection protocols, and perhaps most precious, personal reflections about her hopes for her son's future role as guardian. She knew someday you would stand where she stood, Sarah says softly, her hand gentle on Jacob's shoulder as evening shadows lengthen across the clearing. Later, as flickering firelight illuminates the gathered council members sharing their first meal together, a tradition Raymond explains dates back centuries, Jacob watches their faces animated in discussion about protection, strategies, scientific monitoring programs, and educational initiatives for local communities. Max rests beside him, the guardian dog's presence steady and reassuring, as it has been since the moment they found each other after his mother's death. Both of them, somehow knowing their connection transcends ordinary companionship. The responsibility feels enormous, yet strangely right as Jacob fingers the guardian stone in his pocket, understanding that his mother had prepared him for this role in countless subtle ways throughout his childhood, the puzzle boxes teaching problem-solving, the hiking expeditions building physical endurance, the shared love of mountain ecology instilling protection instincts that now form the foundation of his council leadership. The youngest council leader in our history, Raymond remarks quietly, settling beside Jacob with a cup of herbal tea, but perhaps exactly what is needed for the challenges ahead: new eyes, young strength, and a heart already bonded to both guardian and mountain. The November morning dawns clear and cold as Jacob follows Raymond along a newly revealed path to the sacred spring. Max trotting ahead with the confidence of a creature returning to ancient homeland. 3 months have passed since the formation of the new council. Months filled with gradual adjustment to his role and responsibilities, but today marks Jacob's first return to the luminescent waters since their desperate escape from Merrick and his corporate team. The reconfigured cave system welcomes them with cathedral-like solemnity, crystals catching their headlamp beams and scattering light across limestone walls, now adorned with small monitoring devices developed by Dr. Chen, unintrusive technology that measures water levels and mineral composition without disturbing the spring's natural processes. The central chamber appears transformed from Jacob's memory of chaos and pursuit, the protective mechanisms his mother installed now standing down to reveal the spring's full beauty, a pool of impossibly clear water glowing with gentle blue-green luminescence that seems to pulse with living awareness. "Your mother came here often during difficult times," Raymond explains as they settle at the water's edge, the elder's movements deliberate and respectful. She believed the waters held wisdom as well as healing, that sitting in communion with the spring could bring clarity to troubled thoughts. Max drinks deeply from the glowing pool, the familiar transformation rippling through his powerful body as the enhanced guardian attributes activate, his eyes taking on their distinctive blue luminescence while he settles protectively near Jacob with heightened awareness of their surroundings. Following Raymond's example, Jacob removes his shoes and places his feet in the spring's edge, gasping slightly at the initial sensation. Not temperature, but something more profound, as if the water recognizes him at a cellular level, welcomes him with gentle energy that travels upward from his submerged feet through his entire body. "Listen with more than ears," Raymond instructs, his own feet in the water, eyes closed in peaceful meditation. The spring speaks in ways beyond human language. The skepticism Jacob might have felt months ago has dissolved through experiences defying conventional explanation, allowing him to surrender to this moment, to close his eyes and feel rather than analyze the sensations flowing through him. Memories of his mother surface with unexpected vividness, not the painful final images of funeral arrangements and empty rooms, but earlier, happier moments that had been overshadowed by grief. Her laugh echoing through mountain forests during hiking trips, her patient explanations of complex natural systems, the pride in her eyes when he solved particularly challenging puzzle boxes. These recollections arrive without the accompanying ache that has defined his grieving, instead carrying warmth and connection that feels immediate rather than distant. Time loses meaning as Jacob sits communing with the waters, occasionally opening his eyes to watch the luminescent patterns shifting across the pool's surface like living communication, each configuration bringing new emotional insights, forgiveness for his uncle's betrayal, compassion for his mother's difficult choices, and most significantly, acceptance of her absence, alongside appreciation for her lasting legacy. "The waters help us understand what logical minds cannot grasp," Raymond explains when Jacob finally shares these experiences, the elder nodding with understanding born from lifetimes of traditional knowledge. "Healing comes not from forgetting our wounds, but from integrating them into our wholeness. The spring helps us see patterns too large for ordinary vision. When they eventually emerge from the cave system into late afternoon sunlight, Jacob feels fundamentally changed, not magically freed from grief, but differently connected to it, his emotional pain transformed from crippling wound to meaningful scar that honors rather than diminishes his mother's memory. This transformation continues in subtle ways throughout the following weeks as Jacob settles more comfortably into his dual identity as ordinary 11-year-old boy and council leader with ancient responsibilities. School arrangements negotiated by Sarah allow him to attend classes in the nearby town while maintaining his connection to the cabin and mountain, his academic performance strengthened rather than hindered by his extraordinary experiences. Max accompanies him everywhere, the German Shepherd's protective presence providing both practical security and emotional stability, their bond deepening through daily training sessions based on his mother's guardian protocols. Most evenings find them on the cabin porch, watching sunset paint the mountains in spectacular colors. Jacob often reading from his mother's journals or council records, while Max maintains vigilant watch. Their shared purpose, creating a partnership that bridges the gap between human and animal consciousness. Your mother would be proud, Sarah tells him one evening, joining them on the porch with mugs of hot chocolate. Her role as guardian, evolving naturally into loving parent, not just of what you've accomplished, but of who you're becoming through it all. Jacob scratches behind Max's ears, feeling the guardian dog lean contentedly against his leg, and realizes with quiet certainty that the spring's greatest healing hasn't come from mystical waters, but from the purpose they represent. The legacy of protection and responsibility that has transformed devastating loss into meaningful connection to something larger than himself. Spring brings renewal to the mountains as melting snow feeds countless streams that eventually converge in the underground network surrounding the sacred spring, the cycle of seasons reflecting changes in Jacob's own life as he approaches the one-year anniversary of his mother's death. The cabin feels truly like home now, its rooms filled with evidence of his evolving life. School projects spread across the dining table, council documents organized in his mother's former office, and Max's bed positioned strategically near the front door, where the guardian dog can maintain his protective watch. Sarah's presence has transformed the space as well, her ranger gear hanging beside Jacob's jackets, her books mingling with his on living room shelves, her careful guidance helping him navigate both ordinary childhood and extraordinary responsibility with increasing confidence. The letter arrives on a Wednesday afternoon, official documentation from the family court indicating his Uncle Robert has completed required rehabilitation programs and community service following his reduced sentence for cooperation with federal prosecutors. Accompanying the formal papers is a handwritten note expressing genuine remorse and an unexpected request for permission to visit the cabin and to speak with Jacob in person about family matters that need resolution. After consultation with the council and considerable personal reflection, Jacob agrees to the meeting, though tension keeps him awake the night before his uncle's scheduled arrival, memories of betrayal still sharp despite months of healing. Max seems to sense his anxiety, staying closer than usual, occasionally resting his chin on Jacob's knee as if offering wordless reassurance. When the unfamiliar sedan finally climbs the gravel road to the cabin clearing, Jacob waits on the porch with Sarah and Max flanking him supportively, watching his uncle emerge from the car looking noticeably changed, thinner, his formerly confident posture now hesitant, eyes downcast, until he stands before his nephew with visible effort to meet his gaze. "Thank you for seeing me," Uncle Robert begins, his voice lacking its former brashness. "I know I don't deserve it after everything that happened." Their conversation moves to the clearing behind the cabin where privacy allows for honest exchange. Max maintaining vigilant position beside Jacob while Sarah remains respectfully distant but within eyesight. The apology comes first, halting but seemingly genuine as Uncle Robert acknowledges the magnitude of his betrayal, explaining without excusing how financial desperation and ignorance of what was truly at stake led him to cooperate with Merrick's schemes. "I never understood what your mother was protecting," he admits, gesturing toward the surrounding mountains. "I saw only land and potential profit, not legacy or responsibility." What follows surprises Jacob completely. His uncle explains that during court-mandated therapy and community service with environmental restoration programs, he developed genuine appreciation for conservation work and newfound respect for the Hayes family legacy. "Your mother was protecting something precious, something I was too blind to see," he continues, emotion making his voice unsteady. "I'll never fully understand the spiritual aspects that you and the council talk about, but I've learned enough to respect it." The true purpose of the visit emerges as Uncle Robert produces legal documents prepared by his attorney, papers officially relinquishing any future claim to the Hayes property, and establishing additional financial support for Jacob's education from remaining family assets previously tied up in legal proceedings. "You belong here if that's what you choose," he says, surprising Jacob with the first real understanding he's shown of his nephew's connection to the mountain. "But I also want you to know you have options beyond this place if you ever want them." The statement crystallizes something that has been forming in Jacob's mind for months, the realization that continuing mother's work doesn't necessarily mean limiting his future to these mountains alone. The Council has discussed establishing similar protection programs in other regions, where unique water sources face exploitation threats, work that might eventually require education and experience beyond what these mountains can provide. Max presses against Jacob's leg as if sensing the importance of this moment. The guardian dog's steady presence, a reminder of connections that transcend physical location and of responsibilities that might evolve rather than diminish with distance or time. Later that evening, after his uncle's departure with tentative plans for occasional visits, Jacob stands at the edge of the clearing with Sarah and Max, watching stars emerge above mountain silhouettes. As they discuss possibilities that suddenly seem more expansive than before, continued schooling that might eventually lead to university studies in environmental science or conservation law, potential travel to other indigenous communities with similar water protection traditions, a future that honors his mother's legacy while creating his own path forward. The choice doesn't have to be permanent or absolute, Sarah reminds him gently. The mountain and the spring have existed for thousands of years. They'll be here whenever you need to return, and so will the Council. Jacob rests his hand on Max's head, feeling the guardian dog's steady presence beside him, understanding that his true inheritance isn't just this land or even the sacred spring, but the freedom to protect what matters in ways that might evolve throughout his life, guided by the wisdom his mother left behind and the guardian companion who will accompany him wherever his choices lead. Summer sunshine bathes the cabin clearing in golden light as Jacob stands before the newly installed memorial plaque, marking the official entrance to the Elena Hayes Wilderness Preserve, Max sitting alertly at his side while visitors gather for the dedication ceremony. The past 12 months have brought remarkable transformation to both the mountain and its young guardian, the wilderness area. Now professionally managed under Council oversight, research grants funding Dr. Chen's studies of the watershed's properties and educational programs bringing school groups to learn about conservation while remaining distant from the spring's protected core. Jacob himself has changed as well. Growing taller and more confident, his knowledge of the mountain's secrets balanced by increasingly normal experiences as he divides his time between council responsibilities and attendance at the local school where he's made friends who know nothing of his role as spring guardian. His decision to remain in the mountain cabin with Sarah as his legal guardian came gradually over months of consideration, the rhythm of mountain life and council work integrating naturally with his academic studies. Uncle Robert's rehabilitation proved surprisingly genuine, his environmental awakening leading to volunteer work with conservation groups and employment with a sustainable forestry initiative that keeps him close enough for monthly visits that have slowly rebuilt tentative family bonds. The dedication ceremony brings together diverse communities now united in protecting the mountain: tribal representatives, environmental activists, local officials, and citizens whose appreciation for the preserved wilderness grows with each season. Raymond stands beside Jacob during his short speech, the elder's presence lending ancestral weight to the boy's words about conservation responsibility. "My mother believed some places hold wisdom beyond human understanding," Jacob tells the gathered crowd. "She dedicated her life to ensuring this mountain's secrets would remain protected, not locked away but preserved in responsible stewardship that balances access with reverence." Later, after the crowds disperse, Jacob and Max make their monthly journey to the sacred spring, accompanied by Sarah and Raymond, following paths now familiar yet never ordinary. The spring itself seems to welcome them, its luminescence brightening as they enter the central chamber, where monitoring equipment confirms what they already sense. The water's unique properties remain stable, its healing influence extending throughout the surrounding ecosystem. "Your mother would be proud," Raymond says as they sit beside the glowing pool, "not just of the spring's protection but of how you've grown into your role while remaining yourself." Walking back to the cabin as evening approaches, Jacob reflects on the path that brought him here, from grieving, displaced child to confident young guardian balancing ordinary life with extraordinary responsibility. Inside the cabin that evening, surrounded by evidence of his evolving life, school books and council documents sharing table space, his mother's research organized alongside his own observations, Jacob understands that legacy isn't something merely received, but actively continued by each new generation of guardians. Max settles beside him on the porch. As stars emerge above the mountain peaks, the German Shepherd's presence, a constant reminder of connections that span centuries of protection and purpose. We're exactly where we're supposed to be, aren't we, boy? Jacob whispers, running his fingers through Max's silver-gray fur, feeling the dog lean contentedly against him in silent agreement. The mountain night embraces them with familiar sounds, a symphony of wilderness his mother loved and protected. Now, continuing under the watchful care of her son and his guardian companion, the newest stewards of waters that have flowed through mountain stone since time beyond memory.